Welcome to Not Another CEO podcast. I'm your host, David Politis. Every week, we talk to inspiring leaders and get the true stories, the ups and downs, the lessons learned, and come away with actionable advice for our own journeys. Today's guest is one of the most impressive first-time founder CEOs I've ever met. Within the first 30 minutes of our first meeting, I could tell that his intuition, resilience, and work ethic sets him apart. His company has built a centralized platform for workplaces to manage food, beverage, and supplies for their in-office, remote, and hybrid teams across the globe. The company was recently recognized as one of America's best startups by Forbes and a top workplace by USA Today. Please welcome co-founder and CEO of Crafty, Nate Rosenstock.
Thanks for having me. That is one hell of an introduction. I don't know if I deserve it, but I really appreciate that. I'm glad to be here.
It's great. Let's jump right into it. First question. So what's the one thing you've done at Crafty, big or small, that's had the biggest impact and you'll absolutely do again if you're CEO of another company in the future?
For us, when we started the business, we were really in the weeds. And I think this expression of like getting in the weeds has almost like a negative connotation. But we bootstrapped the beginning of our business, which meant that for Crafty, as an office food and beverage provider, we were delivering kegs and we were delivering food and beverage to offices. We were picking orders at the warehouse. We were buying from suppliers. We were doing everything. And, there's this expression of like scaling your business. You have to be able to scale. And what we were doing was extremely unscalable. We were not hiring people. We were literally doing the operation end to end, every single detail, every single job. And I remember it was really hard. Like it's really, really hard. I almost felt like, especially because I was working in consulting before that, to go from like a white collar, work environment where the toughest, manual labor was my fingers bashing on keys all day, making PowerPoints and Excel models, to literally operating, a 16-foot box truck and trying to do that while, running the business. It was really difficult, but there was, I remember listening to, I think it was like a How I Built This podcast. I'm driving this 16-foot box truck in Chicago, and I'm listening to podcasts of other entrepreneurs trying to learn what it takes to be successful as an entrepreneur. And I'm listening to the Instacart founder. And I think he got the question of like, so how many deliveries did you do when you started Instacart? He's like, I did like one, maybe like a ride along, but like, why would I do the deliveries? And I'm literally driving a truck listening to this thinking I must be an idiot to want to be in all the details. And myself and all of my co-founders were like that. But if on the next one, which, I hope at some point there is another one, and I will absolutely take the same approach again of getting into the details, trying to understand and build empathy for every detail of the operation before it's too late. Because when you get to a certain scale, it's actually harder to try to get into the details of everything. When the company's bigger, there's more jobs, there's more people, there's more layers. So having that, detailed foundation, I think has helped me build empathy and understanding of everything that happens in our business.
What was the first job you stopped doing?
Well, I was never, Jimmy, who's our CTO, was always, developing the product. So I was never truly developing the product. So from a software engineering perspective, that was not something I was doing. But I would say of a job that I was doing that we got away from, delivery. It was the first thing. And it was something where as you're scaling, you hire one driver and then that driver doesn't work out or they call in sick. And so you're hopping back in. And we had even third parties that did some deliveries early, and we would have to go in, fix things, and constantly be in the operation. But the delivery component was the first component that we aimed to take out from underneath our direct responsibilities, so we could focus on other components of growing our business.
When you said this to me, when we were talking about this, and I was like, I feel like it's one of the most underrated attributes of the best founders who really do understand every job, whether it's one founder or a set of founders, because then when you start hiring people, you really do understand the work that they're doing. They may be more expert at it than you, they may be better at it than you, but at least you can have a conversation with them and really have credibility. I would also say have credibility and respect from them to say, "Oh, you did this job that you're hiring me for. You're not just that." That's a big. I think that's a really big deal, especially when you're talking about physical labor. That I'd say the Instacart example is probably the case for most companies that involve the physical attributes. The CEO is the founder that's found, sitting there doing their emails and doing, but not actually getting their hands dirty. And I think it makes I would believe it makes a big difference to even the following you get from those early employees.
It helps me empathize with the work that they do day in and day out because now I'm not doing deliveries. And so as we scale up our operation, there's a credibility piece that I have that I think if company gets bigger, you worry about sort of like ivory tower leadership and just getting too far away from the work that's being done and losing sight truly of the work that's being done and getting further away from the customer. I mean, all of these risks that you have to solve for as the company grows. Like I remember you telling me about how you did 100 client conversations in 100 days because you got to a point where you're like, I don't feel as close as I used to feel to the customer. I need to get back in there. It's those tactics that require it's those things that help you be more impactful and effective if you still keep a pulse on the business. There's a lot of like, there's this idea of like the founder versus the manager. There's like the founder CEO, and then there's the CEO for hire. And the thing that the founder always has is that experience, like of truly knowing what it took to get to that point of knowing the operation at a detailed level. I mean, that's so valuable. And I don't want to lose that, even as the company grows.
Let me ask you a question, because I will say from my own mistakes over multiple companies, I would hire executives, and I almost hire when I would hire them, my assumption was this person is too senior to get in the weeds and do the job. And they're an executive and they came from this place and I'm paying them all this money. But as I reflect on 20 years of working with other executives, non-founders, I've realized that there's a big need actually for everyone who joins to get in the weeds and do the job at least once, twice, three times so that they understand it. Is that something you see? Is that something you've done, at Crafty as you've brought on non-founder leaders?
Oh yeah. And I think it might be tied to seniority. It might not be. Like you might hire a leader who's not super senior in their career, but their style is that they want to be sort of outside of the work.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
And we've hired some very senior leaders who have and are extremely effective because they're in the work. They're truly they lead from the front. And I think it just helps them ramp, especially when you're joining a company as a new leader. You got to learn the business. And if you're in 6 months, 9 months, and you don't actually know elements of how things are operating at that point, I mean, that's a telltale sign of somebody who's not really getting into the work and they're just trying to, manage. And I don't think for a startup that's an effective leadership hire. I think especially for early stage businesses, like you got to hire. And I think for every stage, probably this is true, but can't speak to like massive companies. But yeah, just hiring people who want to do the work. They focus on the work. I mean, that's the most important piece. The one thing that I like as you were asking that original question of like, what did you give up? The one thing I didn't give up for a while and still kind of like hold close is the client relationship, through sales and through client success. And that's the thing where I think because I've been able to do a lot of different things in the company, it's helped me as a seller. And it, but it's a tough gap when you're like so into being and selling Crafty to then have to hire leaders and build out the team, like shifting from founder led sales to non founder led sales was really difficult. But that was the one thing that I was like really slow to give up. I didn't want to give it up. And I haven't given up. I'm still involved, but we've got a fantastic sales leader, sales team, sales infrastructure, and I'm way less involved at this point. But there were things that I was more quick to probably give up, and there were things that I was really holding on to intentionally, for better or for worse.
I think one of the things that, including again myself and you and I've talked about this, like as time goes on, you do feel like you need to step out of things like sales and get in the sales leader and everything. But actually, as you scale, and as I talk to founders of larger companies, they're always involved in sales. Now, maybe they're only involved now in the bigger and bigger and bigger sales processes. They're no longer involved in the day to day kind of core high velocity deals. But pretty much every founder that I've spoken to, even at hundreds of millions of ARR, they're still involved. They're just involved in a different kind of level of deal.
Definitely. It's important to know yourself and know your skills and like where your strengths are and what you're sort of attracted to doing. Cause you should focus on the things you really love to do. But at the same time, like if you are a technical founder and you don't love selling, I think you got to push yourself to sell, as much as possible. You got to push yourself to be in front of the client, to engage, even if it's uncomfortable, because of how much value you get from those conversations, from what's said, from what's not said, body language, reactions. Like you really miss out on a lot if you're not engaging with the clients. And so there's different pieces where I think, yeah, you want to play to your strengths, but when it comes to engaging with the client, whether you're comfortable or excited about that or not, you got to do it.
So usually I wait a little longer to ask this question, but given the arc of your story, I think it's important that I ask it now. What is the biggest challenge you've ever faced at Crafty, and did you overcome it? How did you overcome it?
So I'm going to sort of build off the earlier story, but you can imagine me and our co-founders were driving a lot of trucks, sitting in these 16-foot box trucks, cruising around Chicago. And our business model was originally a market by market rollout strategy where we were operating distribution centers. So we've got warehouses, we've got trucks, we've got inventory. We launch in Chicago, we go to the Bay Area.
And let's talk about that specifically. The product at that time, you're delivering food and drinks and everything into offices.
Yep. So we're the company behind the scenes in a lot of big technology and financial services companies who offer pantry as a free perk. So there's snacks, there's coffee, there's refrigerators, that entire service. That's Crafty. And our business model was this market by market rollout strategy. So we launched in San Francisco after launching in Chicago, where we're from. And then we went to raise our Series A. It's like, huge milestone for our business. And it's, we started it in like late 2019, and we get a term sheet from a great investor in February of 2020. So signed term sheet February of 2020. We start going through the legal diligence process, and it's March 2020. Everybody knows how the story goes. Like one day we're told you're not going to the office anymore. And I remember I'm sitting at my kitchen table in my apartment, trying to like figure out how I'm going to work from home for what at that point probably felt like maybe 2 weeks. I don't know, maybe a month, maybe 2 months. It couldn't go past June, right? That would be crazy. And we get an email that we're going to have to, the investor who signed a term sheet wants to chat. And the investor, so we get on a call and basically says, hey, look, guys, like we're really big fans, but the world has changed. And, we're not going to be able to do this round this way. Term sheets are non-binding. I have a fiduciary responsibility to my LPs. Like, we're not going to be able to do this round, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a $1 million check. It's going to be a convertible note, and we'll see what happens, right? The world is unpredictable right now. We believe in you. Like, this is a lifeline. Let's see what happens. And though, our $10 million Series A did not come to fruition, that $1 million check was, a saving grace for the business because pretty much all of our revenue stopped we went through a round of layoffs. And we basically went from 130 people to 30 people. The remaining 30, we asked them to take 75% of their salaries. As founders, we stopped paying ourselves. So we did every possible thing we could do to survive because we just didn't have revenue. And we finally got to a point where we were like, we got our burn rate down so low that it was like the company was stabilized. And we just didn't know what we were going to do, truthfully. We were like, what is this business anymore? Like remote work. We had leaders like Mark Benioff and Zuckerberg are out there saying like, remote's the future. We're going fully remote. Everybody was embracing remote with the exception of people like maybe Jamie Dimon and some other banking leaders. But it was the hot thing. And we were really scared that we had just invested, years of our life driving trucks, doing deliveries, building a company for it to all just be, for nothing. And what we did to sort of figure things out was we talked to our customers, of course, called our customers. Said, what are you thinking about? Like, what's going on with your workplace? How are you thinking about it? The consistent theme we heard was that the office is not going anywhere. It's just changing. Like the way we're going to use these spaces is going to be extremely difficult or different rather. But the theme was if I'm a workplace leader or an office manager, I'm going to have a bunch of smaller offices across the country because now I'm hiring people from all over the place. I'm not hiring just in Chicago or just in the Bay Area, I'm hiring people all over the place. So we're going to have a hub and spoke model, lots of small offices, less of a centralized HQ. And so for me, that means I'm going to have a lot of vendors. And that's a vendor management problem. It would be great if I could get a single vendor to manage everything. And in our industry, there's kind of like old school vendors that are everywhere. And then there's independent operators that are really good at what they do, but they're just in one market. So we changed our business model. And instead of thinking about being the warehouse and delivery, the fulfillment in every single market where we operate, we converted our technology from being an operating system into being a platform. And we went around the country to all of these individual, independent, single market operators. Some of them might call them mom and pop operators, and said, hey, join the movement. We're going to basically build an alliance of companies centralized on the Crafty platform so that we can sell to these companies who have many offices across many markets with a consolidated solution, one contract, one invoice, one system of record. And you can handle the fulfillment in your market. And so that's the that's the model that we've been running with. And today, now we operate in 35 markets across 5 different countries. Like this has been really the key to our growth over the past, handful of years.
Was it immediately successful? I mean, you had these conversations with customers. You said, this is what we're going to go do. You got all the mom and pop people together in this platform. Did you know immediately that this was the right thing?
There were things that were working, but there was some sort of operational debt that was happening under the surface as well. And so the thing that was working was sales. We grew like 800, 900% like the first year. We went from like 2 markets to 20 plus markets in the first year. Like clearly we were solving a market problem. In our business though, we're not a pure software business. In our business, you have to fulfill an excellent service for the customer. And that means, inventory needs to show up, product needs to be restocked, equipment needs to be functioning. Everything needs to happen at an extremely high level. And because we were plugging in all of these new third-party partners into our system, we hadn't yet built and established the relationships and the partnership with them to manage high-quality service across the country. So we've got the go-to-market machine working, and then suddenly we start having churn in a way in which we had no churn before. Like we had 0 churn pretty much before 2020. Suddenly we have this thing happening in our business where clients are saying we're not happy. We're like, hold on, like how could that be? And we learned a lot. We figured out what are the right learning mechanisms, the feedback mechanisms from customers so that you can get insights and actually change how you operate, solve problems. Like we had to stand up a ton of different ways to get feedback from customers and then use that feedback to improve our operation. But now, years in the making, we're better than we ever were before. Like we are better across the board everywhere than we were before because of how much infrastructure we've been able to build.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I didn't even think about that challenge where when you're delivering, of course, you're in control of quality. If it's your team, your people, but when you have this network of third-party providers, you have to actually to drive consistent quality across those is that's actually the I guess that's the challenge and the moat on the other side.
The thing that I think fooled us initially was we thought the answer would be trying to control everything, even through the partners, trying to control everything with our partners. And that's not the answer. In fact, it created a lot of friction in our relationships with our partners. And we learned a lot and thankfully have some incredible partners who, stuck with us and kept working with us to get to where we are today. But the answer is empowerment. The answer is tools, information, reporting, right? Like they want to be great. Of course, we all do collectively, but giving them the tools, the information, the authority, the empowerment, that has been what has helped us get to where we are today instead of trying to like control things. And we were like middlemaning too much. I mean, we were really stepping on our own toes in the beginning as we started trying to problem solve around quality. But we've really struck a great balance now of understanding that it's not about controlling everything. It's about giving our team and our partners the tools, the information to be successful on a day in and day out basis because we're all working towards the same thing.
So one of the things you talked about fundraising, you've since raised much more money than that $1 million note, but you've done it now as tech enabled services. Really, it's not like you said, it's not a pure software company. How has that experience been for you? And I think people that are working in pure software companies. You spend time with other CEOs and your friends and everything. What is your view of that? How that process was? Was it a different set of investors? Was it how did you go through that?
Yeah, I think fit is everything. Like you got to find, the right investors that align to your business. And like probably a lot of first time entrepreneurs, you have a lot of conversations. You have, a ton of these fundraising conversations. Sometimes you get attracted to these big VC logos and they might not be the best fit for you, right? In our business as a tech enabled service, like a pure software investor is not a great fit for us because they're not going to understand things about our business. They're not going to, frankly, be able to be as helpful if that's all they do. They're just not. They don't live in the physical world. We operate in the physical world and we're building technology to power our service in the physical world. So it comes back to fit. And I think, you learn like every probably founder does by having just a ton of conversations. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of conversations and hundreds of no's. And every no is probably a good thing because it means that there wasn't a good fit. And the investors that we work with today, we have incredible alignment because they're able to understand our business, understand our customer in a way that I just don't think we would have been able to get with, investors who are really just focused on those pure SaaS, pure software business models. So that was probably the biggest learning. I think I didn't quite appreciate how important it was for us to be picky and to really sort of differentiate whether somebody's a fit for us versus us coming into these conversations saying like, how do I pitch this to them? Like, how do I make Crafty sound attractive to them? Which is the wrong approach, right? If you're trying to like bend your business to fit what an investor wants, that's a really slippery slope. Like if you're trying to be an AI company, but you're not an AI company. Like that's like a really dangerous angle to play. So that was probably the big learning for me is, just speak truth to who you are and how you're going to win. Be really crystal clear on that. And then think critically about fit and do it early in conversations. Don't wait till later. Confront that in the first conversation with the investor.
It's like getting married to someone, right? It's like you can put on a show of who you are, who you think they want you to be, or you can just be yourself, and it'll ultimately results in a better long-term relationship. I actually, you and I haven't talked about this, and this is an interesting take because I do think that most founder or first time founders for sure, I think that they do look up the VC and then try to figure out how do I pitch to this partner, this firm? How do I use what I can read about them to tell them how we fit that thesis versus saying, this is the vision, this is what we're doing, and it may or may not be a good fit for you. And if it is, then let's have deeper conversations. I like that. I know this company years ago who's raising back then with an AI kind of twist to themselves. And when I was talking to them, basically it came out, the CEO's like, well, we just have people in India actually doing all the work behind the scenes, but I know everyone wants to talk about AI. And of course, to your point, now there's a tough situation for him years down the road because there was never AI and it actually is a services company, which is okay, and he probably would have had investors lining up. But anyway, so that's a really good take.
I've done it a million times too. I've made this mistake myself a million times of doing the research and trying to figure out like what do they want to hear from me in order for us to look attractive. And I think what I found is like one that doesn't work short term and long term, and two, when you're really clear and convicted in exactly how your business is going to be successful, investors flex as well. You don't need to flex. You shouldn't, frankly. You need to be crystal clear on who you are and why you are going to be successful because the investors will be the ones who flex if they see a really attractive opportunity. So that's a little outside of our mandate, but we were so inspired by what this business is doing, or we were so impressed by this team and their market and their mission that we said, hey, this is going to be a great opportunity for us. But when it's just like you said, it's like dating or getting married. It's like who's flexing to who, it's that dynamic that has to be managed carefully, but it's maintaining an infinite mindset. There's so many investors out there. There are so many investors out there. And if you can realize that, keep pounding the pavement, like keep having the conversations, you'll find the right investors. You'll get better at it. You'll know who to look for. You'll know what to ask. Then you will. It's just getting through all the no's and taking each no as a learning that helps you get sharper.
So another topic, that I have a lot of opinions on, and when you and I met, we met in New York, and now you're in Chicago, and you moved back there recently, and you're in the office. Can you tell me a little bit about that and that move back to Chicago? Why did you do that? And talk to me about the office culture.
Yeah. So I was living in Chicago from, basically graduating from Northwestern all the way through 2021 and or 2020. And my long distance girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, got into Stern, NYU's business school. And we were at a point, and I was like the first years of Crafty, I prioritized Crafty over literally everything in my life, everything. And when the pandemic happened and we had to go through everything we went through, um, it shed some light on life and where Crafty fits into it. Because we almost like lost the business. It was almost all for nothing. And it was really important to me, and it was the right decision to prioritize my personal relationship with my now wife and move to New York to be together in person. And we said, we're Crafty, we'll figure it out. We will 100% figure it out. But I'm going to move to New York and I'm going to marry this girl, which is the plan, and worked out. And so moved to New York and spent a couple of years in New York. Now New York happens to be one of our largest markets because of this business model that we evolved into. And a couple of years in, then of course, our HQ is still here. And we have an office in New York and we have an office in the Bay Area. And being at HQ is extremely important for me as the type of leader I want to be. Like, we're big advocates of the in-office experience. We're believers in structured hybrid as the best way of working, where you still give flexibility to your employees and you have specific days that you tell folks to come into the office, because there's nothing more frustrating than making a commute and there's nobody there. You're like, all right, I want to work with people today. My team's going to be there. You get in and it's empty. So we're big believers in structured hybrid. We have a 3-day in-office policy, Tuesdays and Thursdays in office, and then pick your third. And it was a very important for me and for my wife to be here in Chicago. And so we made the move back in February of this year. And it's helped me be a better leader, truly. Like, trying to be the leader I want to be virtually or remotely more often than not is really hard. Like, I build deeper personal relationships with the people I work with when I'm able to meet with them outside of the 30-minute or 1 hour scheduled window, because we're going into the kitchen and we're grabbing a snack. And now I'm kind of talking my book, because we believe obviously in the power of food and beverage. But we have a lot of fun conversations and engaging moments that happen outside of the scheduled time of our day. And that's facilitated by being in person together. And so we really put a lot of value in creating opportunities and experiences with in person in mind.
So one of the things, since we started talking, your business is doing very well. Do you believe that is because of the product offerings and the reach that you now have, or coverage area that you have, or do you think that it's because structured hybrid, going back into office, is happening, on a very large scale? If you had to, I'm sure it's both, but how would you rank those?
Yeah, I think, table stakes, our business needs people in offices for sure. And so that to me is probably top of the totem pole, because you could build a great business, but if people aren't, you build a great product or service and there's not demand to use it, then it's not going to be as valuable. And in our business, right, if you've got a company who has a 2-day in office policy and they shift to a 3-day in office policy, that's a 50% increase in consumption. So the contract just became 50% more valuable. So we've had some big movements like that, where this small change might be small, but it actually drives our business in a pretty material way. But that's not why Crafty specifically is successful. That's why our market is successful. That's why the space that we play in is a good space to play in. The reason why Crafty specifically is successful is because we've come into this pretty old school industry with a new business model powered by proprietary technology that nobody else has. I mean, we're lucky. It's nice to pitch that you're better, but it's better to pitch that you have something that nobody else has. Like, if you can truly say in a sales pitch, we're going to show you things that nobody else can possibly show you, because we didn't copycat this. We invented it from scratch based on our own innovations and ideas, and the software layer that connects everything that we do in the physical world that we've developed over nearly a decade now is unbelievable. I mean, I'm so proud and impressed by what our technology team has been able to accomplish. And it's not only a go-to-market tool for us, I'm talking about the sales process, but it's the reason why we're able to deliver the highest quality pantry experience, because it gives us the tools and information, ourselves and our partners who use our software, to ensure that the quality of the experience for our clients is top notch.
We had we had co-founders, co-CEOs of a company called Revivin on the podcast, and they operate in a similar business, except for for end of life for hardware, and they have a logistics network, and they pick up devices all over the world. And what I said to them, and I think the same for your business, which is in today's world, copying a pure software company is frankly pretty easy, and it's happening too much. I mean, the number of companies I'm involved with that, you know, new ones pop up left and right. The speed at which you can build a software company is just, it's kind of crazy. And so someone can look, oh, that's a great idea. Let me copy it. Let me use, ChatGPT to write my marketing material, and let me do this. And all of a sudden, I've got a copycat product for cheaper. When you have what you do, because of the physical world, it's actually quite, I imagine, it is really difficult to compete, because you do have the software layer, but then you have that connects to the physical world, to these independent third parties that you work with. That feels like some pretty real moat.
We haven't seen a lot of startups, enter the space, which is, I think, one way to measure whether or not it's easy to start up a company in the space. And we have seen a lot of the competitors that were tech enabled falter over time too, through the pandemic in particular, and just through the difficulty it is to execute in this type of business. Like, we're a people business. We're not just a technology business. We're a people business. And that is it is a challenge, and it is a moat, like you said. The with software businesses, like, you get great margins, but I think of that Bezos quote, right? Your margin is my opportunity. And like you're saying, somebody else can potentially build it cheaper and faster, especially with globalization of software development. It's like, you could look at a business that was built and paid for here in the US with software engineering talent out of the Bay Area and say, okay, like, we could probably build that same thing for less somewhere else and offer it for less to customers. And if the functionality is close enough, I mean, especially in today's economy, like, yeah, it gets tougher to really distinguish yourself from the competition today as a pure software business. But I think there's pros and cons to both, without question. I mean, I could tell you about all the cons with doing what we do as well, because there are certainly challenges to both.
So you've evolved a lot as a CEO, first time founder. Like you said before, came from consulting. How have you been able to evolve your skills as a CEO and grow as the company grows?
The early days, we were just running around like kids. I mean, we were just trying to, like, plug holes and figure it out, and just from sheer will and, like, effort, kind of hold the business together. Um, Now that the company is, really starting to professionalize, that's been a new challenge. All right, I need to be a great leader in a way that they don't really teach you. I think sometimes people think of leadership as like innate skill. Some people have it, some people don't. I don't think so at all. Like, I think it is such a learned skill. And one of the things that's been really helpful, I think, well, first off, having a great co-founding team, which we've had since day one, is the best thing, because we hold each other accountable, we give each other honest feedback, and we just care about each other. And but recently we brought on an executive coach, which has been extremely helpful from a developmental perspective. And I think the biggest learning for me in those conversations and that experience is, I was trying way too hard. And what I mean by that is, like, just trying to be somebody, trying to, like, I don't know, like, one of the learnings has just been, whatever I need to be successful is already inside me. And believe me, I'm a work in progress. But it's not because I'm going to get something from someone else or somewhere else, or reading this book or listening to this podcast. It's going to be because I look inside and I find it from inside, and I am able to demonstrate that, or display that, or build that skill or that muscle. And it's really just honestly calmed me down a lot, that perspective. Like, it just made me more confident. And that's the stuff where I think now I can be a better leader because I'm not doubting myself in ways like I definitely did before. Um, and I can just be more confident, more calm, more even keeled, and just focusing on the work, focusing on the problems, focusing on the people, and not worrying so much about me and what other people are thinking about me and stuff like that. I mean, again, total work in progress on that, but that for sure has been extremely helpful.
Is that coach, do all the executives have the same person as a coach, or different people have different coaches?
We all have one coach, the three of us.
Wow. Oh, the co-founders specifically.
Exactly. The co-founder specifically.
And how long has that coach been working with you?
About a year. About a year. Yeah. I mean, I highly recommend it. It's like, the expression of like Tiger Woods had a swing coach. You know, everybody's got a coach. The best people in every field, Olympic athletes, have coaches, right? The coaches is such a valuable resource. And we live in an environment now where this thing, executive coaching, is like taking off. Everywhere I look, people are talking about executive coaching. I think just as a society, we're talking about this comfortably in a world where maybe, I don't know, 20, 30, 50 years ago, a CEO would be like, I got this. I don't need a coach. Even if some of them did or didn't have them, like it's a great time in the world to be able to develop like this with those resources, and they're out there. So I like strong recommender.
How often do you meet with the coach?
It changes depending on where we are. But weekly, bi-weekly, it just, yeah, it kind of weaves in and out.
It's what's so interesting to me, however many episodes I've recorded at this point, every single person has a person, whether it's a official coach or a mentor or some person. And it doesn't matter if the person's a multi-time founder, if it's a small company, if it's a big company. It's actually been, it's kind of like you're saying, the Tiger Woods example, the Olympic coaches. Like, it is so interesting that pretty much everyone has said, I think 100% now has said that. And it's amazing, and it's someone. One person was like, well, my therapist kind of turned into my coach, but it doesn't matter. It's like there is a person who's there helping, coaching, be holding that the executive accountable, so I really I like that. When you just when you think about your direct team, your co-founders plus the other leaders that you've brought on, how do you um, get that group aligned? Because I feel like, again, in the conversations we've had, it does feel like you're pretty deliberate and moving the company forward in a pretty deliberate way with everyone on the same page. Like, how do you do? Is that a meeting cadence? Is that just because you all know each other really well and trust each other? And is there a goal setting process you use? How do you do that?
Yeah, I'm big on operating rhythms, and so like to have clear meeting cadences with specific groups. I mean, we do a weekly, we do a monthly, we do a quarterly with different, basically smaller, bigger, bigger. So like exec team, senior leadership team is monthly, exec is weekly, and then the leadership team more broadly is quarterly. And then all of that fits within our annual planning cycle. In the annual planning cycle, we produce our strategic plan for the year. And a strategic plan goes further than a 1 year, but it always focuses on the year upcoming. I'm a big believer that if you put the right rhythms in place and then you run these meetings effectively, um, the team starts working together really effectively, because alignment is not top down. Alignment is horizontal. It's all about how do you get this executive to work well with this executive, or how do you get this leader to work cross functionally? And it's all the way down. But we really like to think about that horizontally versus like, how do I get everybody to think like me? It's like not the answer at all. But the key with us has been focus. There was a period of time where we were figuring things out and we were trying to do a lot, trying to be a lot. We're trying to be a caterer. We're trying to be an event service. We were trying to, I mean, there was a lot of things we were throwing at the wall. And look, originally it came from a good place, right? Because we were trying to survive coming out of the pandemic. So it was like the years of yes. Customer wants something, say yes. We got nothing to lose. Might as well say yes. And then recently, it's been about shedding all of these distractions and getting us to focus on the core. And that's just made everybody's lives easier. It's simplified everything because we know our core is pantry operations. And we know that our strategy is delivering the highest quality pantry experience for national accounts in the US. So we're not trying to be the cheapest. We're positioning ourselves as the premium offering, which means we need to invest in the experience, which means everything we need to do is about premium. And then for national accounts in the US, we know we're not for small offices. We're for companies who have many offices that have a complex operation that we can simplify. But putting these guardrails around it, even the US part, because there was a time frame where we do operate in 5 countries. We were getting excited about going international, rein that back in and just get everybody to simplify things. That's been really helpful as well to get alignment because you make things easier for people to understand who we are and what we're trying to do when you try to do less and just do better on less instead of trying to do more.
What are you most excited about for the future of Crafty?
I'm excited to stay focused, on that same vein. I think we can just keep going deeper. Like we can just keep honing our craft. And what that looks like to me is, on the people side, building a company where when people leave or graduate the business, they write X Crafty in their LinkedIn and they say, they talk about having worked at Crafty is that professional experience that changed them for the better. Like that's some next level stuff. I mean, but I get really excited about building a place where people can become the best version of their professional selves. And they seek out an opportunity to go work at Crafty because of the way we run our business, because of this group of people. So I get really excited about that. I get very excited about the potential our technology has to continue changing the industry. We're building this digital ecosystem that connects all of these different stakeholders, and we're just scratching the surface. Talking about going deeper, we have a lot of depth yet to go on that. So I'm really excited about the opportunity that we have in front of us on a technology basis, and just keep going. I mean, it's like compound interest. We can just keep going, keep building infrastructure, and you want to see I want to see it sort of build on itself. And we're just getting started. So 10 years in, we're just getting started. And I'm just excited. Yeah, I'm really excited for the future.
I want to talk a little bit about your background. You actually, I think you just posted on LinkedIn recently about some of your family story and your experience with your family's business growing up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I got the photos right here. I always keep this on my desk or near my desk, but this is the store.
Oh, yeah.
In 1919, my grandfather's grandfather immigrated to America from what would be present day Belarus, which they called White Russia at the time. And, like many immigrants, they brought a trade with them, and their trade was selling fur coats or furriers. And they started a company in 1919. And my dad was the fourth generation owner and operator of that store. So growing up as a kid, he'd work 6 days a week, half the year, and 7 days a week, the other half. And on the weekends, we'd go work in the store. My brother, myself, sometimes my grandparents would go, my mom, etc. Small store. Basically, we had 3 non-family member employees. But as a kid, getting to sort of grow up in that environment and you're working shoulder to shoulder with your grandpa and with your dad, and just seeing them as proprietors, as entrepreneurs, as business operators, I think that has had a really lasting impression on me. My job was walk into the store. First thing I would do is run to the back, get the keys, and we had these gates on the front door. So I'd unlock the bottom of the gate, fling up the gates. Then I'd go into the bays, which were basically the closets where the stores were, but they're on the side. We called them the bays. And I grabbed coats to put them on the mannequins in the windows. So you got to set up the windows first thing. So you put the coats on the mannequins, and then I would sweep. You got to sweep underneath because furs they shed, so they got fur all over the place. So you got to sweep the floors. We Swiffer in the back, and then the mirrors, man. The mirrors, they had these like trifold mirrors where there's like wings because you want to be able to see all the way around, and those mirrors had to be spotless. And if I didn't do a really good job in those mirrors, I would hear about it. And so you go and you Windex the mirrors and you make sure it's like crystal clear, and then you vacuum. And during the day, I'm putting away coats and grabbing coats, and I'm running down to storage. We used to have a storage unit that was 60 feet underground because furs need to be stored in the right temperature and humidity. And I'd be running down because someone would come pick up their coat. So I run down and grab it. It was a great experience. I hated it as a kid, as you would expect. I hated it, but I loved it, I think. But, I didn't want to wait. I would wake up so early. I'd be so tired and go in. But, man, yeah, looking back and feeling like there is a legacy of entrepreneurs, before me, and, 4 generations of Rosenstock men were entrepreneurs in America. And I have the luck and opportunity to, follow in their footsteps. That gives me a lot of purpose. And I'm super grateful for that too, because it's not easy for them. There's no question. But yeah, that was me growing up in Pittsburgh. Those were, how I spent a lot of my weekends.
Is it still there?
No, we closed the store down after 97 years of operation. And we closed the store, and I want to say 1918, 2016. When I was growing up, my family always told me, like, you're never taking over the store. Like, no way, because fur in America, at least, is a dying industry, pun intended. People don't wear fur coats like they used to. It was like, that was the thing. They, with just different consumer trends, like, it was a really tough business at the end. It was a really tough business. So not something that I was, being pushed to do by any means, but definitely I think having the entrepreneurial bug in me came from that.
Do you think, when you said before, you talked about how Crafty was everything in your life for a period of time, and do you think that comes from that? I mean, we're seeing your because this was everything in that long line of people's lives, right? All the men in your family. Do you think that's part of it that drove you to be like that?
That's such an interesting connection, because I've never thought about that before. But yeah, for sure. I mean, the store, as we called it, was like a very important thing in the family. And yeah, I think that seeing the way that our family prioritized the business and really put it in front of a lot of things, and we made a lot of sacrifices. I talked about how much both my parents worked, and yeah, I think that there's certainly, a connection there between how much, emphasis we put on the business, and then how much emphasis I put on Crafty.
Yeah, I at least for me, myself, and my own experience, and then a lot of people that I talk to that have been around parents that are entrepreneurs. Actually, I find that a lot of they don't know a different way, because actually, what you grew up with is that business was, to your point, a centerpiece of. It wasn't like, I'm going to work now and I won't talk to anybody about work. It's like it was just part of life, and at least for me, I'm big. I always say, like, I don't see work life balance. I don't. To me, it's all part of one thing. And I anyway. So I asked that because I feel like that's, from what I do know of you, it feels like that's kind of deeply embedded. So even if you've have a little bit more balance, it doesn't really take away, the way how core Crafty is to your life, is what I assume.
Yeah, totally. And balance is key for sure. But, given you're at such an interesting point in your journey, having had a successful exit and now being like in what I would call the abyss. I'm like, okay, then, what do you do? How have you, managed this new era being cut from literally the same cloth? Cause I know your dad's story and your story is so similar to mine.
Yes.
Yeah. How's it been for you?
It is very difficult. And I think as time goes on, I've been very open to tell people like it's so every company I've been a part of at the time that I was part of that company was such a big part of my who I am, and so it's definitely this missing piece that I've been trying to fill in different ways, but I'm not sure it'll ever be filled until I have something again that is my own. Actually, this podcast is a big part of that. Is something that I can control, something that I can build, something that I can sink my teeth into because I do think that it's you feel a little lost not to have something to dedicate my time to my mind. I'm researching you, I'm reading everything I can about you, I'm doing, because if I didn't have that, like I need that. So you're right, the abyss is a good way to put it, and trying to find the right thing to put my energy towards. So yeah, it's and actually a lot of I'm working on getting more founders who are out of an exit, maybe second exit, and the conversations actually have been very, very similar, where people go through this abyss until they find that thing to latch onto and dedicate themselves to, and it takes longer and longer each time because you're less and less naive about what you're about to enter into, and so it's really interesting. It's a good question.
The abyss is good because it makes you really appreciate not being in the abyss.
Yes. Yeah.
And the more comfortable you are in the abyss, the more, joy you can find in life in that chapter as well. Then the more likely you are to find something that you really love to do that you can, latch onto and fall in love with and go have another chapter of the journey.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. So last question for you: what is knowing everything you know today? You've been through this 10-year journey, the ups, the downs, the successes. Knowing everything you know, what is the one piece of advice you'd give yourself at the beginning of your career before you even started in consulting?
I think there is a lot of value in constraints that I didn't really appreciate as much until right now. And it's this idea of like, pressure creates diamonds and like, you have to like, destroy your muscle to build muscle. Like the struggle is where the value is. And I think constraints for entrepreneurs in particular is like one of the most valuable things you can have. Like if you have a small team, hell yeah. Like you're faster. You don't need to have a huge team to be successful to build product market fit. If you don't need to raise money, don't. Or if you can raise less, raise less. Like this idea of just adding resources is not a strategy. And I think it's baggage. And, if you can really survive and thrive in an environment of less, you'll end up building something better. You'll end up being more successful. You'll have more ownership. Um, I think too, just like this like silver spoon concept. And I'm a definitely was a victim of this too, which was, hey, Northwestern graduate, McKinsey consulting, and then I'm going to start a business. And you don't like you don't really know what you're doing until you do it. You don't know how to be effective and efficient until you've built the skills to be successful. And so if you bring on too many resources, I think you end up getting sort of slower, stodgier. You end up putting out probably worse product or less product. And, you know, on the next one for sure, like just in continuing in our current business today, like I'm thinking about this today, is just creating constraints because I think constraints can inspire innovation and great ideas and um, living in a world of just like total comfort. I don't know. I just don't think you can be as successful in that type of environment. I think it's got to be hard. The harder it is, probably the more successful you'll be. Things are easy and going smoothly. Like, it sounds like trouble. If it's like, hey, everything's going well, it's all good. I'm like, something's up. Like, I don't know. But yeah, I would say the value of constraints is the big thing that I would definitely reemphasize.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, if people want to find out more about Crafty or if they want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
So for Crafty, our website is craftydelivers.com. Crafty with a C, Crafty, delivers with an S. And for me, I'm on LinkedIn, Nathan Rosenstock. I would love to connect there.
Awesome. Nate, thank you for this. I enjoyed this. I've been looking forward to this, and I think it delivered. There's a lot people can take away from this and learn from. So thank you very much.
Dave, I appreciate you. Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Awesome. Well, for those listening, hope you enjoyed. I'm sure you took away a lot from this conversation, and if you did, please share it with your friends and your communities and your networks. And we'll see you for another episode of Not Another CEO Podcast. That's a wrap for this week's episode of Not Another CEO Podcast. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, please visit notanotherceopodcast.com. We'll see you next week.